What if I told you that one revolution changed not just a country, but the entire world? That one idea, socialism, sparked protests, toppled empires, and created one of the biggest superpowers in history. In this video, we're diving deep into Class 9 history. Chapter 2. Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Whether you're preparing for your exams or just curious about how revolutions are born, this is the only explanation you'll need. Fast, clear, and complete. Let's begin. 1. The Age of Social Change. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Europe was experiencing dramatic political and social changes. The French Revolution, 1789, had sparked ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. It inspired people across Europe to challenge monarchies and think of new ways of governing. But not everyone agreed on how to bring change. By the 19th century, three main political ideologies emerged. Liberals believed in individual freedom, equality before the law, and a government based on a constitution. But they did not believe in universal adult suffrage. They thought only property-owning men should vote. Radicals wanted more reforms than liberals. They supported democratic rights for all men, including workers, and wanted to end the privileges of the aristocracy and church. Conservatives wanted to preserve traditional institutions like monarchy and the church. However, they gradually accepted that change was necessary but believed it should happen slowly. 2. The coming of socialism to Europe. As the Industrial Revolution progressed in Europe, cities grew, factories emerged, and a new working class developed. But workers faced long hours, poor wages, unsafe working conditions, no rights or protections. This led to dissatisfaction and a search for alternative systems. That's where socialism emerged. Socialists believed the means of production, land, factories, mines, should not be owned privately. Wealth should be distributed equally. Workers should have more control over their work and lives. Early socialists, Robert Owen, set up a cooperative community in New Lanark, Scotland. Louis Blanc believed in government-funded workshops run by workers. 3. Karl Marx and the idea of a socialist future. The most influential socialist thinker was Karl Marx, along with Friedrich Engels. They believed all history is a history of class struggle between the rich, bourgeoisie, and the working class, proletariat. The capitalist system is inherently exploitative. Workers should unite and overthrow the capitalist system through a revolution. This would lead to a classless society where all property is owned collectively. Their ideas were published in the Communist Manifesto, 1848. 4. Support for socialism grows. By the late 19th century, socialist ideas spread across Europe. Workers formed unions and parties like the Social Democratic Party in Germany. Governments were forced to give workers rights, such as limited working hours and pensions. 5. The situation in Russia. Before 1917, Russia, in contrast to industrialized Europe, was still largely feudal. It was ruled by the Tsar, emperor, who had absolute power. The majority of Russians were peasants living in poverty, workers facing long hours and poor conditions. There were no elected assemblies, and any opposition was crushed. In 1898, the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party was formed. It later split into two. Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, believed in a fast revolution led by a small group Mensheviks, believed in gradual change and mass participation. 6. The 1905 revolution caused by Russia's defeat in the Russo-Japanese War, 1904-1905. Growing discontent among workers and peasants. On 9th of January 1905, thousands of workers marched to the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg with a petition. Soldiers fired on them. Bloody Sunday. Over 100 people were killed. Result? Nationwide strikes and protests. Tsar was forced to allow a Duma, parliament, but he kept power in his hands. 7. Russia enters World War I. In 1914, Russia joined World War I. This had disastrous effects. Soldiers were poorly trained and unequipped. Food shortages worsened. Economy collapsed. Inflation soared. Tsar Nicholas II's leadership failed, and public anger increased. 8. The February Revolution, 1917. By 1917, Russia was on the edge of collapse. In Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, workers went on strike. On 8 March 1917, women led protests demanding bread and peace. Troops refused to fire on protesters and joined them instead. On 3 March, soldiers and workers formed a Soviet council. The Tsar abdicated on 15 March. The monarchy ended. A provisional government was formed, mostly liberals and moderate socialists. But the Soviets, workers' councils, also held power. Russia now had dual power. 9. The October Revolution, 1917. The provisional government failed to end the war, provide food and land, improve worker conditions. This gave Lenin and the Bolsheviks an opportunity. Lenin returned to Russia and gave the famous April Theses, demanding, war should end, land be given to peasants, banks be nationalized, power to the Soviets. On 25 October 1917, the Bolsheviks led an armed uprising and seized control of Petrograd. The provisional government was overthrown. Russia became a communist country. 10. What happened? After the October Revolution, land was redistributed among peasants. Factories were taken over by workers. The Bolsheviks renamed themselves the Communist Party. The Russian Civil War began, Reds versus Whites. By 1920, the Reds won. The Bolsheviks were now in full control. Russia became the USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, in 1922. 11. Stalin and collectivization. After Lenin died in 1924, Joseph Stalin took power. He introduced 5-year plans, rapid industrial growth, collectivization, forced merging of small farms into large collective farms. Result: millions resisted, many were arrested or killed. Famine struck, especially in Ukraine, but USSR became a major industrial power. 12. Global impact of the Russian Revolution. Inspired communist movements worldwide. New communist parties formed in Germany, China, India, and other countries. Western countries feared communism, Red Scare. Debate began over socialism versus capitalism. Conclusion. The Russian Revolution was a historic event that reshaped not just Russia, but global politics forever. It marked the end of monarchy, the rise of socialism, and the beginning of communist rule. It brought hopes of equality, but also showed the dangers of dictatorship and repression. So that was the complete chapter. Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution, explained in the simplest way. If this helped you understand the topic, don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss out on the next chapter breakdown. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.